There are 3 things I have to have at the sewing machine. Welcome to the Sewing Report. I'm Jen. This channel is all about making sewing fun and approachable. And I want to give some quick tips for any beginner sewists out there. If you're just getting started, I want to share 3 things I always have ready at the sewing machine, and I'm going to be explaining why. So this is my daily driver. This is the Juki DDL 8700. I know it's a little bit overkill, and this is an industrial straight stitch machine, but I absolutely love it. I had it for a few years. Mine came with a built-in light and a table. If you have the space for it, I think it's a great machine. So all I've got to do is turn it on, and I keep it loaded with thread. I have white, it's a glide thread. It's a really nice polyester thread. I've got it ready to go. It's good for sewing, it's good for quilting, and I have a neutral color. I've got a bobbin already in and the top thread. So if I want to sew, I can just sit down and just get to the sewing. So let's go over the items that I just keep on hand, and I'm going to walk you through why. Yes, the first item is a solo party cup. I've been using this same exact one for several years, and this is my thread catcher. This is super cheap or free, and this is what I use whenever I'm just dumping scraps of little bits in there, fibers, whatever. Whenever I'm cutting threads here at the sewing machine, this is my little like mini trash can, and then I just keep throwing it out into the larger trash can later. But it's very convenient, and I just keep it on my sewing table or sewing work surface wherever I am. The next item is thread nips. So I have a lot of different scissors and cutting tools. This is the one I really like using at the sewing machine. This is by the brand Gingher, and it's good. You can use it for left-handed or right-handed cutting. This has a spring action to it, but this I find is the most convenient for just quickly cutting threads at the sewing machine. All you got to do is push in and it will cut your thread. I've had this pair for several years. By the way, I will link some of these products down below in the description box. Some of them are affiliate links, but everything here was purchased by me. And yeah, I just love these. The quality is really nice. They work and they're really comfortable in your hands. So you can really just kind of hold this however you feel comfortable, and it cuts thread. The third item, this might seem a little odd, but this is the Clover Taylor's awl. The Tailor's awl does come in a few different varieties. I saw they have like a curved one. This one is just like your straight Tailor's awl. I've had this for a while. I don't really use it a lot for punching out holes. I actually kind of use this as an extra finger at the sewing machine. If I'm trying to hold something in place close to the needle and I don't want to put my fingers in jeopardy, this is what I use. So I'm going to give you a little demonstration on my typical sewing just to give you an idea of how I use all of these items. I'm just working on some small projects here. So I've already got the thread loaded up. Just going to hold it back while I do the first few stitches. All right, just going to do some back stitching. So I've got a few inches of stitching, and I just keep the thread nips here, and I'm just gonna snip these off real quick and put them into the cup here. Doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. So now I'm getting to the end, and I'm going to be turning a corner here, and this is where the awl comes in. I'm going to use the awl just to keep the fabric in place here. But I don't really want to put my finger here because that's getting a little too close and I don't want to accidentally hurt myself. So just take the awl, and it doesn't damage the fabric, but it does help to just hold it in place. So I've got my awl here. And that sort of acts as a third finger here, or an extra finger. So now I can, here we go, turn this corner and keep sewing. And then I'm going to take the awl again and hold it down on this corner just to keep the fabric from shifting around too much. All right, so let's do a few back stitches here. Okay. Now let's move on to another piece here. I'm making scarves, so I just have a little opening for turning here. So I'm going to start sewing at the edge of my opening here that I left. And I glue basted, so that's why I don't have any pins. I just did some glue basting, so I don't need any pins, so that makes things a lot easier for this project. And this is just some Rifle Paper & Co. rayon. So it's a really nice fabric to sew with. So you can see I can hold the fabric down here and here. Once it gets close to the needle, that's where the Tailor's all really comes in handy. Back stitch a little bit. Okay, and then... And also at this point, I can snip these threads here and then just clip these. And that's why these thread nips come in handy. Just such quick work here. Stick them in the cup. And now I've got these separated. All right. Now I'm getting to the end. So this is where my awl comes in. And I'm going to slow down a little bit, because I want there to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. So when I pivot, here we go, that's perfect. I'm gonna use the awl again, because again, I don't want my fingers getting real close to the needle. That can be a little too dangerous. Use the awl as your extra finger here. I know I've seen some other items marketed as an extra finger. I just find this works really well. It just does a really nice job of holding the fabric in place, and it's like a nice fine point there. So this is my preferred tool for doing that. All right. So I hope this gives you some ideas of your workflow at the sewing machine, especially if you're kind of new to sewing. You might have some questions on what makes things easier or a little more convenient. Some other items you might consider are things like a lint roller, especially if you're working with a fabric that sheds a lot. Also, before I sew, I usually clean off my work surface with some water wipes or some other cleaner, or like just a damp cloth, just to make sure you're working with a clean slate. So I just wanted to show you just how I sew, just sort of as an everyday thing. So see, I could not use anything, but it just really helps to have something to grip on either side of the needle here. And this I just find works really well. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'm taking the awl again. All right, and you can see I can get real close without getting my finger in the way. The original foot that came with this machine does have a needle guard, but I personally really like this narrow foot, especially for doing things like top stitching and whatnot. And if you are interested in this machine, I do have a couple other videos about it here on the channel. This is the machine I use for my everyday sewing. I know it doesn't do everything and it just does a straight stitch, but I did figure out how to put a walking foot on it. And I've been able to use it for, like, I would say most projects. I've been able to make it work for me. All right. I've tried using seam guides and whatnot, but I just didn't really care for them. I've tried a couple different ones. I just like holding the fabric in place to the seam guide on the needle plate. I just find that works best for me, is just sort of holding the fabric and just eyeballing it. That's just the method I like the best. Let me get the awl again. So here we go. And just about one more. Okay, hold this in place too. So now that I'm done with this little sewing session, I'm just going to snip these threads, and then I'm going to leave the tails for my next project, whatever that is. All right, just a quick overview on the 3 must-have items at my sewing machine and a demonstration on how I use these items in my everyday sewing. I hope you found this video helpful. I do have a playlist for beginner sewing, so check that out. You can also find fabric and sewing supplies. I sell them on Etsy, and you can find me at sewingreport.etsy.com. I'm Jen with the Sewing Report. I'll see you again in the next one. And remember, whatever you're doing, make it fun.